Everyone, welcome back to another live community classroom with Michaels and Happy New Year. We have our friend Marley Bird with us today for a super exciting class because she's going to be teaching us how to make this marled crochet super scarf. My name is Renee L. from Yarn Inspirations, and I'll be helping with any questions you might have during today's class. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll make sure that Marley answers them. While we're getting ready to kick things off, let us know where you're watching from. Over to you, Marley.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Can you believe it's 2023? It just seems so unreal. I had a nice little break at the end of last year, which was much needed. And so it feels good to be getting back into the swing of things. And what better way to do it than with a fairly simple stitch pattern that we can eat up some of our stash yarn you might have lying around, because we will hold 2 strands of yarn together throughout the whole project. So you could start off the new year with a new project, a new stitch, and eating up some of your stash. So that way, when all those new spring yarns come out, we can be like, oh, I got room for that, right? So pretty easy stuff. But today we're going to use a K crochet hook. And if you've taken my classes before, I prefer Susan Bates hooks, the inline hook, and it's just a handle to hold my hook because I crochet so much, my hand starts to cramp. And we are also going to use 2 balls or 2 skeins or 2 cakes of the Caron marble cakes, whatever you tend to call them. And like I said, we are going to hold 2 strands of yarn throughout the whole project. Say you have 2 balls or 2 cakes of latte cakes, or you have 2 cakes of Caron cakes or one of the other ones, and you want to mix those together, you absolutely could do that. You'll get a slightly different look. It won't be necessarily marled, but it will be a similar style. No, let's not say it that way. It'll be a similar look, but the exact same style, because you're going to do the exact same instructions. You'll just have different colors that you're working with. But with the marled cakes, with the yarn already being twisted around with a couple colors and then combining 2 strands, we're going to get a good variety happening here. Now, this is it's an easy level scarf. I will take you through some basic instructions at the beginning with how to do a slip knot, how to work into the beginner chain. And then once we get going on that stitch pattern repeat and you have that down, it's just smooth sailing from there. So go ahead, grab that pattern. I know that Renee has put a link in the video description and in the meeting chat, so you can grab that pattern. It's also free over at yarnspirations.com. And we're going to get started. So I'm going to jump down to my hands here. Let me do this. I got a new camera, guys, so we're going to try this out. Let's see if this works. Maybe. It worked. Thank goodness. All right. Is that coming through loud and clear? How's that look on your end, everybody? Let me know.
That is in reverse for me.
Oh, so now it's in reverse again. That is so funny, right? Okay, so hold on. We've had this, we were playing around with this earlier. Let me try this again and move this over here. How about now?
Nope. Still showing as reverse. Maybe flip to the other one and then back and it'll refresh kind of.
All right, so hold on. I'm going to flip to the other camera. Guys, we were playing with this beforehand too. So I'm going to switch to this camera and then we're going to go back and see if it works. Any luck?
Still in reverse.
What is happening? This worked before. All right, one more time, y'all. One more time. Sorry. I am so sorry. See if this works.
We got it.
Yeah, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got it.
Okay, good. Woo!
Perfect. I thought we were going to have to do a left-handed class.
I was like, really? We were making right with this. Last one is so good. Okay, so I have my 2 balls of my marled cakes right here. I have them set up here out of the way, but here is the pattern that you have in front of you as well. It's the Caron Crochet Marled Slanted Shell Super Scarf. You can make this as long as you want. We're essentially going to make it until you run out of your 2 balls of yarn. Has very few stitches. We are going to use our K hook. It does give us a gauge that we will, how do we say this? We have a gauge right here that we can strive to achieve, but ultimately, guys, it's a scarf. We're not going to stress about that. We're just going to move right along into the pattern. If you have any specific questions about the pattern right here, go ahead and let me know in the chat, and Renee can jump in and kind of let me answer any specific questions you might have. But if you guys are good, we're just going to jump in over here. And the scarf is made with 2 strands of yarn held together. So I have pulled 1 strand of yarn out the middle of one of my cakes and another strand of yarn out the other middle of the cake. I'm just going to hold those 2 together, and we're going to hold those together throughout. Now, if you happen to have gotten 2 cakes where they are essentially like the same color order, I would try and mix them up. I would maybe pull from the outside of one and the inside of the other, because ideally you want to have different points of color as you're working along. Okay, you don't have to do that. It's just a suggestion. Okay, I'm going to move this out of the way. You guys have this copy with you, so I'm going to move this out of the way so that we can have a pretty blank canvas underneath me. And I'm just going to pop it up there. Okay. So we will get started with a chain 32, and we begin with a slip knot. So hold the tail of your yarn in the palm of your hand. Is that like super exposed for you guys? Like the exposure? It seems like so bright on my end.
Yeah, it's looking a little bit bright.
Okay, can you just give me just a second? Let me just see if I can switch it, because it just seems really bright on my end. Maybe? Like, where is this? Let me see. Is that better?
Oh, yep, that is perfect.
Okay, I think so too. All right, so we're gonna go with this. All right, and new year. I hear that Mercury is in retrograde, so you know, all the things we gotta get done. Okay, so here we are. We're gonna start with the slip knot. Tail of the yarn in the palm of my hand. Take my working yarn, I kind of hold my tail in place, and I wrap my working yarn around my forefinger and my middle finger. And when I come back up, I cross over, okay? I cross over. I rotate my hand. I pinch that down so it doesn't go anywhere. Go underneath the front loop, grab the back loop and off. Pull my fingers out, and I have a slip knot. Now, there's lots of different ways to do a slip knot out there, but honestly, you guys, this is the way I have found the easiest to be able to show people. So I'm going to show you one more time. Essentially, we're holding our tail in the palm of our hand, wrapping our yarn around our forefinger and our middle finger, cross over, rotate underneath the front, grab that back and off. If you have a different way, you can absolutely do the other way. Now, as I said, this is an easy pattern, but that doesn't mean everybody in here understands all the instructions. So I'm going to start off with a friendly reminder that you never count the loop on your hook as a stitch. Ever, ever, ever. If a pattern is written where the loop on your loop is counted as this, or the loop on your hook counts as a stitch, I would really question that designer's pattern writing skills. Yeah, I said it, because it's not supposed to count as a stitch ever. All right, so that does not count as a stitch, which means when we chain 32, we don't already have one. We don't have one until we actually go around our 2 strands of yarn and pull that through the loop on our hook. Now we've chained 1. Does that make sense? Go around your yarn, pull through the loop on your hook. Now I have 2. So we want 32 of those. So I'm just going to keep going here. And you'll notice that once I get about 3 or 4, I will usually take, I'm right-handed, I take my left hand and I come up on my base of chains. And you know where you kind of see it's the flat V's right here? I put the pad of my thumb on the top of those V's right up close to my hook so that it holds those in place and they aren't getting twisted all around and making it a little bit more difficult for me to work into those chains later. So as I move my left hand up and put my pad of my thumb on the top of those V's, it keeps my chain nice and straight. All right, I've completely lost count. So I'm just going to keep going here. And then I will go back and count. So Mabel Minnie May is asking, why don't you count that as a stitch? Because it is not an actual stitch as of yet. It's not like knitting, where when you put a slip knot on your knitting needle, that's already counted as a stitch, like it's actively working as a stitch. Where with a crochet, that loop on your hook is just to get you started to make a stitch. It is not an actual stitch. It's just to get you started making that stitch. All right, I'm going to count my stitches here. So one of the benefits of keeping your thumb on the top of that V is that it makes it easier for you to count stitches. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. So I can rip back and I have my thumb on the one that was 32, which means these loops here are going to go on my hook. And that is not my 32nd stitch. Those are just loops on, that's just a loop on my hook, right? And we're going to confirm that one more time because nothing worse than getting off at the wrong number at the beginning, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, and the loop on my hook does not count as a stitch. Okay, everybody good so far? All right, see how nice and smooth your chain is now? And it keeps it really great. Now, it's at this point, you'll have some people, and this is again, because we're talking, you know, essentially as beginners, you'll have people who will have you turn your work and work into what I call the butt of the stitch. It's that one back bump on the bottom of your chain, okay? And that is a great way to work into your chains if you want to, because it leaves this really beautiful V-stitch exposed on the outside. I typically will rarely, let's say it this way. I will rarely work into the back bump because I find it tedious. For me, I like to go through what, if you're looking at this, this is the front loop and that would be the back loop. I essentially pierce the center of my V. And so it puts that back loop and the butt of the stitch on my hook. And I'm going to show you what I mean. So we will begin by putting a single crochet, chain 3, and 4 double crochet in the second chain from hook. So let's start here at the beginning. Chain on the hook does not count as a stitch. So we're going to go to the second chain from hook. So not this first one. We're going to go to this second one. And we will start off with a single crochet. So I'm going to take my hook. I pierce it through the V, and you'll see here, that right there, that's my back loop. That right there, that's the butt of my stitch. It leaves the front loop essentially exposed. It's just a personal preference for me. That's how I tend to work into my chain. I have a lot of beginner crocheters who just don't understand how to work into a chain. This is my preferred way. I like the way it looks. There are some people who will say just at the beginning here, they'll just work through that back loop, okay, the back loop, or they work through the back bump, and they do that by rotating this over and then going underneath that back bump. I find that tedious, like I said, so I will usually first chain, second chain, pierce right through it, and we will start off with a single crochet. Now right here, see how I accidentally only grabbed one strand? We don't want that. We want to grab 2. So I'm going to undo it, go in again, grab both strands, make sure you're always pulling through both strands, come up to where your hook and yarn is everything even with your chain row, yarn over, and pull through both loops on your hook. That is one single crochet. I'm going to pause for a minute. Everybody knows what I'm getting ready to do, right? I'm going to grab a stitch marker and I will place it into the top of that stitch I just completed. So I look at the V behind the loop on my hook. See that V? That's the top of the single crochet I just completed. Okay. Ooh, that was really bright. We don't want that. Now, the instructions have the next set of instructions. All of this is in parentheses, right? A single crochet, a chain 3, and then 4 double crochets. We will put all of that into this stitch. So we completed the one single. We're going to chain 3, And then we're going to do 4 double crochets into this same stitch. Okay, all of that is the same stitch. And we know that because it's all inside of parentheses. So I yarn over my hook, go into that same stitch or that same chain that I did the single crochet in, insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, make sure I have both strands, yarn over, draw through 2, yarn over, draw through 2. So that's 1. We need 3 more. Yarn over my hook, go into that same chain, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. Yarn over my hook, go into that same chain, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. 1 more. Yarn over my hook, go into that same chain, yarn over my hook, pull up a loop, make sure I have both strands, yarn over my hook, draw through 2, yarn over my hook, draw through 2. So all of that is in that one stitch. Now I'm going to give you a tip here. When you put a bunch of stitches into one chain, it tends to make the chains on the other side of it shrink up and almost disappear. So as you're working along and we start counting chains, so like it says we're supposed to skip the next 5 chains, you have to look for where those 5 chains are, because sometimes one of them can look like it's disappearing underneath that double. So one thing that I do, I'm going to show you guys this. One thing that I do, we just talked about the anatomy of our chain, right? So we know that this here is the front loop of the chain we were working into. And we could see that's the front loop of the next chain, right? It's kind of hard to see the rest of it going on, but we know that that's the front loop. So we can automatically be like, oh, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 that says to skip. And then in the next one, which is this one, is where I'm going to put all of the next set of stitches. Does that make sense to everybody? So one way that I make sure that I can count my chains to make sure I don't accidentally skip one, because you can accidentally skip one, it can get hidden up behind all of this work here, is I look for my exposed chains down here, my exposed front loops, I should call them, and I count from there. Now I will tell you guys this. This is a little designer secret. You guys ready? I will sometimes chain more than I need on purpose. So that way, if I accidentally skip a couple chains here or there, I still work up to where when I hit the end, I either have used up those extra chains unknowingly, or they're still down here and I can just undo them, but I don't have to redo my whole project. Does that make sense? So sometimes I will just chain a couple extra, knowing that I can just rip them out later and fix it. That's, I mean, seriously, I know so many people who do that, especially when we're talking about working for blankets, like chain 300. You know what? Do yourself a favor and just chain 320 just to make sure, because you can rip those out. They're not hard to rip out. Okay, so we're going to skip 5 and then we're going to do a single crochet to start. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's the next one. So in the 6th one, I'm going to put my hook right through that center. There's the back loop. There's that butt of the stitch. And we're going to do everything that's inside of those parentheses again. So we're going to do the single crochet, do a single crochet. And yep, all this is going to kind of bunch up like that. That's okay. It's perfectly normal. We did a single, chain 3. Get myself some more yarn here. And now we're going to do 4 doubles all into that same stitch right there. So we'll do the first double, second, third, whoops, and fourth. All right. Now the instructions say that we're going to repeat from star to the end of the chain. So we go back to where the star is in the instructions, and we can see that it's star is where it says skip the next 5 chains. So we're going to repeat all of this. So again, my chain right here looks really squished up, right? But if I look for my front loop, I can find it pretty easily. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go to the 6th one. I'm going to put my hook through the 6th one, do a single crochet, chain 3, and then do 4 double crochet. And as I'm working on this, because we're going to do this all the way down this row, I'm going to ask Renee how everything's doing in the chat, because I can't really see it as I'm working along this with you guys. Make sure, is my video okay and everything look good? I don't have any of that up. Okay.
Video looks great.
Awesome.
Chat is going great. Great tip about how to keep the stitches flat using your thumb. So that is a great takeaway. One person asked about stitch count. Hang on. Is there a pattern stitch count for the slanted shell stitch? It looks like a 6-stitch repeat. So it's not listed in the pattern.
Off the top, I have to draw it out. I am not very good at just off the top of my head knowing exactly what it is. I honestly have to draw it out. So I would love to answer you. My guess would be 6 stitches as well, since that's what we're repeating, is we're skipping 5 and we're going into 1. So my guess is 6 as well. But
yeah, that sounds right to
just
me.
That it's a guess, because I literally have to draw it out, just the way my brain works. I'm not that math person. I have to visually see things.
Same
Which
here.
is probably why I over explain stuff sometimes, because I feel like I have to really show people and help them understand what they're seeing and why they're seeing it, and how it makes a difference, so that way they can take that knowledge for future projects,
Totally. Because everyone learns differently.
Exactly. I mean, for every video that I have somebody that says she talks too much, there's somebody in the same comment section that's like, I now finally understand, you know what I mean? So just everybody learns differently. It's just the way it is.
Totally.
All right, I think I need one more. And if you guys are ever curious, if you're just kind of like what I was, where I'm just like, oh, do I need one more? I often will count, these are the post of the stitches. So I look at the post of my 4 double crochets and I'm like, oh, I only have 1, 2, 3. So it's how I can tell that I need one more. You could look at the top of the stitches, look for the V. Notice the V's are at the top of these stitches, but with this marled look and the 2 strands together, it's a little tricky. So I would defer to going to the post, because you can actually like feel those. You can be like, oh, I can see exactly. I can feel where they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's my last stitch here. That's my slip knot. That's my last stitch. So I made it to my last stitch. If, for example, I had done more stitches, on purpose, this is where I'd work the last one, and then I would undo whatever I didn't do. Because you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're doing one more, 6. So you're going to have 6 total of these stitch sections, if that makes sense. Did I finish the single? Yeah, I did the single. So I did 3 chains and then 4 doubles. 1. I think everybody's working along, so they aren't having a chance to ask any questions. They're like, let's do this. It's great. Like I said, it's a great stash buster. And I love the marled cakes. So Lord knows I have a lot of them in my stash. Okay. This is what we have here to begin with. Let's see. Susan, yep, is thinking out loud. I think so too, Susan. I think you are correct on that. Everybody else working along, looking good? Everything looking good on your end? Yeah, I just want to make sure everything looks great.
An interesting question from Melissa of how it would look with just one strand of yarn. I think it would just be like a lovely pattern, but you wouldn't get the marled.
Yep. And you probably would need, I mean, you're going to get a different gauge. It's going to be smaller, obviously. So you would want to play around with that. You might need more stitch if you wanted it to get this width, but only one strand of yarn. You'd have to have more stitches. But yeah, it's definitely a look you could do. You could take this, guys, with the stitch multiple. You could turn it into a blanket. You could do all sorts of things with it. All right. So this is pretty darn easy. So here we go. So we're going to do the second row. So I'm going to pick up my work. And it says chain 8, and it tells us in parentheses, it counts as a double crochet and a chain 5. Now I'm going to pause here for a second because I want you guys to think of, this is how my brain works. All right. So I have a chain 8, counts as a double crochet and a chain 5. Then it gives all these instructions. I'm going to pause for a second and come over here and look to where the end of my row 3 is, because I want to know, where does it tell me to work the last stitch? Skip the next chain 5, and it says 1 single crochet in the 3rd chain of the chain 8 turn. Why do I want to know that? Can anybody guess why I want to know how it ends? I'm guessing you guys can, I know you're probably typing it out. I want to know how row 3 ends. Exactly, Tina, because when I start row 2, and I work all the way down row 2, I want to know that when I start row 3 and come all the way back down row 3, where's that last stitch supposed to be down here on row 2? So I know where to put my marker. So because I know I'm supposed to put it in the 3rd of my 8 chains, when I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to take another marker and put a marker there, and then chain the next 5. Now, I didn't do that on this end because I just was kind of just going with the flow to start off. But even here, let's see, skip the next 1 double crochet, 1 single crochet in the top of the last chain 3 and turn. So down here, even though I put it in the top of the single crochet, that's not where my first stitch is, my last stitch is going to be. It's actually going to be in here. So I did that just because out of just general knowledge, I guess. But I can see at the end of row 2, my last stitch is actually going to be in here. So that's going to change where I start putting my markers, I think, on this end. I'm going to put it in that chain 3. Actually, I probably won't even need a marker because that chain 3 is, I mean, it's like in your face, right? So you don't have to worry about that. So if you're ever in doubt on where you need to put a marker, that's the little trick, is I always look at what the end of the next row is. So we'll start here. We'll chain 1, 2, 3. I'll pause. I'm going to put it into the V behind the loop on my hook. Why is that? You guys know this answer. Because the loop on my hook never counts as a stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So now it's just not this random 8 chains. I know exactly that when it's time to get to the end of my row 3, in that actual chain, not into the space, but in the actual chain, I will be working a stitch. Okay. I chained 8 and turn. You can turn and chain 8, whichever way works for you. It really does not matter. Okay. And when you turn, especially you beginners, this can get really confusing because you're just like, you could turn and accidentally have it facing like this. And that's not what we want. So when you turn your work, and when I say that, that literally means we've worked this way, and now we want to work back this way. So kind of like we're just flipping it over. I was going to say a typewriter, but that's not it. We're flipping it over so that way we can work back. And when we flip it, you want to make sure your tail is at the bottom. Okay. You don't want it to be at the top because then you've flipped it like this, right? We want it on the bottom. And you should be able to see all of those chains that we skipped. They're going to be on the bottom. Now at the start here, it's hard to see. As you get going, it's going to get easier and easier. But if you want to give yourself like a big, hey, hey, little lady, this is where you want to make sure like this is the bottom. You could always take another marker and just put it literally on the bottom, just so that you're just like, oh, that's the bottom of my work. Okay. All right. So I've turned my work. Finally going to do row 2. So we've chained 8, and then we're going to skip the next 4 double crochets. So we have, you have to come down here. You have to find the V. So here's the post of my double. So there's the top of it. So there's skip the 4 double crochets. And then we're going to do 1 single crochet in the top of the next chain 3. Right? Skip the next 4 double crochet, 1 single crochet in the next of the next chain 3, and then chain 5. And we're going to do this a total of 5 times. So we're skipping all of those. Here's our chain 3. We're going to go into the space and do a single. Then we chain 5. And then it says to do that 5 times. Now I will give you guys a little tip. Most other patterns will make this. Remember how I told you earlier that the parentheses here let you know that everything inside those parentheses are done in the same stitch or chain? Well, right here they have parentheses, but it's really, in my opinion, it should be a bracket. And the reason it should be a bracket is because it's telling you how many times to do it, not where to do it. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everybody? And I just want to point that out because this is beginner. I want to make sure if you ever came across a bracket, you're like, what is that? Typically, parentheses are in a stitch, right? Brackets are like a number of times. All right. Does that help? I'm just trying to help you guys out a little bit. So it's not necessarily that they're wrong. It's just they chose to do it differently. But I want to make sure that as you come across other patterns, you know what that means. So we've chained 5. We're going to skip these 4, come over here to this big chain 3 and do a single crochet. I said chain 4. Yeah, chain 5, skipped 4, single. Chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Skipped 4, single. Chain 5. Skip 4 and single. Chain 5. Skip 4 and a single. So it said to do that 5 times, right? Skip 4 5 times. So that was our first chain 8. So we skip 4. Sorry, I just want to write chain 8, skip 4, single crochet, chain 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. So that's where it ends, right? Because we end with the chain 5. It says skip the next 4 double crochets, 1 double crochet in the top of the last chain 3. So we skip here, here's our last chain 3, and we do our single crochet. Now here's the question. Skip next 4, 1 single crochet in the top of the last chain 3. Does that mean we go into the space, or does that mean because it's the edge of our scarf and we want it to be nice and clean, we actually go into that 3rd chain of the chain space? I will be honest with you, if this were my scarf, I would go into the actual chain. I think it looks better. And especially because we've already read ahead and we know we're going to work into the actual chain down here. So for me, I would work into the actual chain here. I would not go into the chain space at the end of my scarf. It's going to give you a nice, more straight column. Leah is asking, could you also sew the brackets, describe the repeat? Yes, you could. Yes, if like up here, the star repeat, if they wanted to say repeat like a certain section an X number of times, they could have used brackets instead of the star. They're kind of interchangeable. I like the star repeat because it's just a really easy way to go back to a larger set of instructions. But yeah, brackets could be used on those types of repeats too, but they're typically used for number of repeats. Usually when you see a bracket, you'll see on the outside of the bracket, you're going to do all that X number of times or X number of times more, if that makes sense. Whereas parentheses, you see it on the outside, you do all of this in this stitch, in this space. Because you could also combine brackets and parentheses. Make sense? Clear as mud, right? All right, so chain, we're on the third row here. How are we doing, Renee?
Sorry,
Yes,
Julia, doing great.
Awesome. Julia said it's like turning a page. It's exactly what we're doing. It's like we're turning a page. So row 3, we're going to chain 1. So I'm going to turn because it tells us to turn and chain 1. I usually chain 1 and then turn, but that's just me. Just a habit thing. So I'm going to turn, chain 1, and then we have parentheses here, 1 single crochet, chain 3, 4 double crochets in the first single crochet. So that's all right here. I'm going to put my first single crochet into this first single crochet. And because of what I've learned down here, I'm not going to mark that stitch, right? I'm not going to mark that stitch. Anybody have a clue which one I'm going to mark? I'm going to mark my third chain. So that way I don't have to look for it. Because if I want this edge to be nice and straight, I know I want to work into that. Yep, good job, Julia. Third chain. And then I'm going to do 4 double crochets. So what you'll notice, you guys, is this will essentially be like the right side of your work. So every time you're on an odd numbered row, this is when you're going to be doing, I'm going to call these all the action stitches because it's a lot more than just chains and single crochets, right? We're throwing in all this big groups of double crochets. So when you're on an odd row, that's your action row. That's where you get to see the front of these double crochets because there's a definite distinctive look between the front of a stitch and the back of a stitch. But if you ever are accidentally all of a sudden looking at the back of the doubles and you're working doubles, but you're looking at, you can see the back on previous rows, something went amiss. But if you're doing it correctly, you'll notice whenever you're on this side that you should be looking at the fronts of your double crochets and you should be working on your double crochets. Now, something else you could do if you guys wanted to, you could make it to where when you're on an odd row, maybe you use a different colored marker. So maybe when I see I have a blue marker, I know I'm on a row 3. If I see an orange marker, I'm on a row 2. And then I can throw this one down here again, just to let me know that that's the bottom of my work. I'm trying to give you guys as many tips as possible to be as successful as possible with this. All right, so it says skip the next chain 5 space. So that's all of this. And then 1 single crochet, chain 3, 4 double crochet in the next single crochet. So in each of these single crochets we worked across, we're going to do this set of stitches here. So we're just going to go to the next single, go right into it. We'll start off with a single, chain 3, and then 4 double crochets. Looks a little something like that. And then you just skip everything, come over here to the next single crochet. I will tell you guys, if you are not familiar with crochet, maybe this is only like your, second or 5th project. It is very easy to start off, and maybe you start off really tight at first, and then you start to get looser as things get more comfortable, or vice versa. So you want to make sure that you're keeping your stitches consistent throughout. And the best way to do that is honestly to use your hook to your advantage. These hooks come in different sizes because they help you regulate the size of your loop as you're working your stitches. So if you make sure all of your loops are the size of your hook each time, you will have consistency in your stitches. And I'm going to show you what I mean here. Let's do this first single crochet pretty normal, because it's usually single crochet is not too big of a deal. It's when we start to do chains or double crochets that things go crazy. Now I just did those chains, and if you notice, I made sure they were all the same size as my hook, just like I did when I was doing my other chains. Look, my loop is on my hook, I yarn over, I pull through, I don't make that tighter, right? Because that tightens up the chain. So now all of a sudden that's going to be too small. So my stitches are going to be too small. And I don't go like this where I make this loop bigger. This loop no longer is the same size as my hook, right? It's no longer a correct gauge. So you always want to make sure that as you are chaining and you pull through, don't give this an extra tug to tighten this up, because you don't want it tighter. That stitch down there is now the same size as your hook, which is what we want. And this loop on your hook is the same size as your hook, which is what we want. Okay, so that's the first step. When you get to the double crochets, this first yarn over and pull up is what usually gives people problems. They yarn over and they pull up this loop and they pull it all the way up like this. Okay. Is this loop, I'm going to take that loop off. Is that loop the same size as my hook anymore? I mean, I could fit my whole finger in it. Is that the same size as my hook anymore? No, it is not. So if we want to make sure that this stitch is going to be the same size as my hook, not only is this first loop that we pull up, we want to make sure it maintains the same size as my hook. So when we yarn over and we pull through, we want to make sure that the yarn over is not too overextended. So now I've yarned over, pulled through two. See how the two loops remaining on my hook are the same size as my hook, right? So I yarn over, draw through two, and everything is the same size. This is how you can keep consistency. So if you were to pick a project that you wanted to make sure that everything was super consistent, this is how you would do it. This is why gauge varies by so many different people. I could have a particular gauge with this size hook because of the way I crochet, and I really do crochet so that my stitches are the same size as my hook. But if you are a crocheter that uses this hook, but you crochet like this, your stitches are going to be significantly different sized than mine. See how much bigger that one is compared to those? Does that make sense to everybody out there? Yes, this is just like a plethora of a bunch of tips thrown at you in a very easy scarf pattern, because why not try them all out now? It's going to make all of you better crocheters, which is awesome, because then you get to go off and make even more stuff, buy even more yarn, get even more hooks. I will tell you guys something that I do. If you've probably noticed, I just like how I put the pad of my thumb on the V of my chains, you'll notice that I pinch the post of my stitches as I make them. You guys notice that? Some people will be like, I can't see her make a stitch because has her thumbs in the way. I'm actually not interfering with the hook part. I'm literally I'm using the middle finger and my pad of my thumb underneath the hook to stabilize the size of those chains, or the loops that are on my hook, I should call them. So it's just easier to pull through. This is consistent. I essentially pinch this so it doesn't get any bigger or smaller, and pull through. So I tend to really control my stitches a lot, and it allows it so that they don't get overextended. Not everybody does that, but I like to make sure that my stitches are very uniform. And I will tell you, my stitches are very uniform. All right. So we are to the end now. Just about. I'm going to do my chain 3 and my 4 doubles here into this single crochet. And then we're going to work into that actual chain that we already marked when we did those chain 8s. One, two, three, one more. So here we go. I'm coming over here to where I've actually marked it, right? And again, for me, y'all, I will go through that chain just like I did my foundation chains. So you can see that's my back loop. That's the butt of my stitch. I can remove my marker. I will do a single crochet and then chain 3, right? No, just a single crochet. Yep, just a single crochet. So I went to the end and it says just 1 single crochet there at the end. So if you read the instructions now, I haven't turned my work yet, right? So I'm still looking at the right side of my work. It says repeat rounds 2 and 3 until your work measures about 75 inches and then fasten off. So here's a little tip. If you're like, I just want to use everything I have right here to make this scarf and I don't want to measure it, you absolutely can do that. However, you want to pause for a second and make your tassels, if you want the tassels, make your tassels right now. And then you could just use whatever is left to make your scarf. Does that make sense? Like that's truly a stash buster when it comes to doing things like this. All right. So if you want to just do the measurement wise, you can absolutely do that. But if you want to make tassels, you'd want to make your tassels right now and then just set them aside and then use all your yarn you have left to just make the scarf as long as it can be. And then your tassels are already done and you can be good to go. All right. So that's another little tip. So I'm going to turn my work and get through, see if I can get through 2 more rows. Did I say rounds earlier? I meant rows. I'm going to see if I can get through 2 more rows and kind of ask Renee to jump in if there's any other questions. But I'm going to go back to the second row here and we're going to chain 8 and we're going to put a marker on our third one, just like we did before.
It's looking great. I'm loving how the color work is coming together.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, you just let the yarn do all the work for you, which is great.
Yeah, I love it. It's super easy.
Yeah. Once you get through this repeat, you're like, oh, all right, I get this. And like a row 2 is pretty darn easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, because it's just chains and single crochets, right? Again, if I turn my work, see if I turn my work here, I can see, oh, that marker's up there. That's not what I want. I want to make sure I've turned the work properly. And until you get familiar with it, I mean, that's no shame in having markers. Everybody who's taken my classes here before can tell you, I think markers are great because they really help. They're just little stop signs for you to let you know what's going on. All right, so I'm going to put a single crochet up here into this chain 3 space and then chain 5. And then just go across. Are there any other questions out there?
So Judy asked if we'd like fringe rather than tassels. Do you have any suggestions for where to place them?
Oh, I would absolutely put it where the skip chains are. I just don't know what it's going to look like on the other end. Like I'm guessing, I mean, they don't have to be matchy-matchy. Put it where your skip chains are. And on the other end where you have these chain 3s that I'm working into right now, put your tassels there. Like I would just mix them up there.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot go wrong. Yeah, you can't go wrong with fringe or tassels or, I mean, everybody loves fringe and tassels. And you might say, no, I don't like fringe and tassels. I'm telling you, they're just something, there's something fun about them. And they really just put like that extra little oomph into your project, I think.
Completely agree. It kind of makes it a little bit more professional. That's not the right word maybe, but like more finished.
More finished, yeah. And the palm and tassel maker that Red Heart makes is really, it makes making palms and tassels very easy. So if you're interested at all, like that's an easy tool to use to make those pieces. All right, so if you guys notice, I just went all the way down. I made it real easy. I just worked right into that 3rd chain with my single crochet. Like row 2 is nothing, y'all. Row 2 is your let's sit back, relax. It's the next row. So the next one, we're going to chain 1, turn, And then this is our big action row, right? Because this is where we have all of those stitches. 1, 2, 3, and then go. Just work through this. My favorite part of doing these Michael's classes, Renee, is that I know that I can give all these extra tips of instructions and stuff and get through the entire, like everything the student needs to make this item. And I love the fact that they have a chance to go back and rewatch the class. Like that's a benefit that you don't usually get with in-person classes because, you know, once the instructor is gone through the information, most in-person classes are not recorded. So you're kind of left with what your notes say in your memory. Whereas with this, you have a chance to follow along with the class, go back and rewatch the class, take notes during the class. Like there's so many options. I think it's just a really great way to expand your skills and a way to do it not only on the time frame that we have here in the class, but on your own time later on with the class itself on YouTube.
Totally. I'm a big note taker personally.
I am too.
And it feels rude in person somehow. But yeah, and a lot of these tips are things that you might not necessarily see in a pattern. They're sort of things that you pick up along the way through experience. And I think that's the really big benefit of these classes, or like how to fix a screw up, because it happens.
Right. Yes, very much so.
And sorry, Marley, would it be possible to demonstrate? So Patty was saying, I'm anxious to see where you put the single crochet in the repeat second row. I'm putting them in the chain 3 space. I was typing and missed it. In the top chain or in the chain 3 space?
So I did the chain 3 space in the body, but I did it in the top of the chain at the end because I wanted to make my ends as straight as possible. If you kind of do it in the space at the end, you're going to get kind of the gaping holes. So I did it in the actual chain to kind of it just kind of cleans up the edges just a little bit, in my opinion. Could you put it in that space in the end? You absolutely could. But if it were me and my scarf, I would put it into that actual chain, the third chain of that. On the ends, in the body of the fabric, I'm just putting it in the chain 3 space. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's perfect. That's what she did. Awesome.
All right, cool. That's how I would do it. All right, so 1, 2, 3, and then keep going. All right. It's the colors of this yarn, they're so perfectly combined. That's not the word I'm looking for. Like, I love the colors of this yarn. That's what I'm trying to say. I love the colors of this yarn. And we're using, you know, it's goes without saying, but we're using the same 2 colors in these 2 balls. There's no reason why you couldn't use a different color ball in each hand. You could absolutely jazz it up and mix things up that way. I know that I have my own patterns out there that I've done that with Red Heart Ombre yarn. I've used 2 different colors of Red Heart Ombre yarn. And like I've started with a dark on one color and the light on the other color and held them double. So as they transition throughout the project, you get a really cool look. And it's just another way to let the yarn do the work for you. So when you're working with these long color changing yarns in the Karen cake lines, there's all sorts of ways that you can manipulate the colors to your advantage just by mixing and matching. So you don't have to have 2 balls of the same color if you don't want. You can absolutely have 2 different colors going along.
Totally agree. Like you can go with complementary colors. I love that it, like from afar, it kind of in the sample or in the photo in the pattern, it sort of looks like it's kind of relatively all one color, but with some texture. And this one probably would look the same way, but you really could jazz it up by really mixing a pink and a blue, or
Yeah.
like a yellow and a purple.
Right. I do want to remind people that, you know, as we're working through all of this, I've been crocheting for a very, very, very long time. So I might make this look really easy. But it does take muscle memory to not only hold your hook, but to hold the yarn, to establish how the yarn overs work, and just to manipulate everything together. So as you're working along, if it's not coming to you as easily at the start, that's okay. Like, give yourself a little bit of grace, and just know it might take a couple times of coming back to giving it another try, that it becomes something that all of a sudden clicks, because your body has to create those neural pathways between your brain, your eyes, and your hands to be able to make all of this work together. So this is a beginner pattern, but depending on where you are on your beginner journey and how many neural pathways you've already created, it could be a little bit more difficult for you right now, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. And the great thing is, I have given you so many wonderful tips to help you become wonderful crocheters, especially as beginners, in this video, because they're things I teach in my beginner classes in general, because I know how helpful they are all the way across the board. All right, so I just finished my row 3. I'm getting ready to go back to row 2. Pretty easy stuff. How are we feeling? Everybody feeling pretty good? I'm going to go back to my face. It's going to take it's going to look kind of funny here at the start because it gives me this funny screen. I don't get it. I don't know why it does that, but here I am. So hopefully you guys have a chance to work up this piece. It's nice and solid and thick. If you're somebody who maybe you don't like scarves, you could absolutely make this in just like 30 inches, 32 inches long, and then just seam the edge together and have a really cool cowl. There's lots of options here for you. Absolutely. And like I said, I mean, you can even mix this up and have a marled yarn and have a latte cakes and have like a kind of a fuzzy sort of looking scarf going along. It's pretty neat. This is the part where there it is, Patty. I usually look at the gallery view to see what you guys have been working on. If you want to show me your work, I would love to see it. Patty, that looks beautiful. You're doing a great job. I can see this. Oh, awesome. It says iPhone 2, but you look great. Marie, you look great. Oh, it's awesome. You guys are doing such a great job. Bravo to you. And if you are struggling out there at all, just know this class is recorded. You can go back and rewatch it as many times as you want. I do have beginner crochet classes on my own YouTube channel if you're interested in those as well. C. de Mendoza, that looks gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. Kira, how you doing? I see you over there. You guys are just doing some fabulous work. That's gorgeous, Kira. That's gorgeous. I love it. You guys are fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to finish your work and show it with me later, hi, Cindy, that looks so good. I would love to see it. If you tag me on Instagram, I'm the Marley Bird over there. Just tag me up, say, hey, I learned this. I would love to smash your like button. That would be really awesome. All right, Renee, take it away, my friend.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today for this live community classroom with Michaels. As Marley said, don't forget to share your work with hashtag Make It with Michaels and hashtag Yarnspo. That's YARNSPO. And tag all of us. We love to see your work. It makes our day. It makes our jobs our jobs are great, but it makes our jobs especially delightful. And just a reminder that you can find more classes on michaels.com, the recording of today's class at michaels.com/classes or on YouTube. And go check out their channel for past classes. There's some great Crochet 101s as well to check out there as well.
Yeah.
And that's it for me.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys. Have fun.